Elias Mercer was a name feared by many, whispered in dark corners and shouted in the heat of battle. Known worldwide, he was a wolf hybrid, brutal, relentless, and unstoppable. His life had been one of endless combat, his fists a blur as he tore through opponents in the arenas. Hybrids of all kinds, bears, tigers, even crocodiles, had fallen before him, each battle adding to his legend. But then, everything changed. Elias escaped. The weight of his chains fell away, and he was free for the first time in years, though he had nowhere to go. He wandered the streets until the authorities found him and threw him into a hybrid pound. It was supposed to be a cage, a place to break him down, but instead, he found something far more repulsive than the thought of being caged. Other hybrids. Puppy hybrids were cute but weak. Bird hybrids chirped around, annoying him. Cat hybrids prowled, but they were too self-involved for Elias to care about. But the worst? The absolute worst were the bunny hybrids. Elias hated them all. He hated their softness, their fragility, their endless need to be babied. They were like toys that needed constant attention, and he couldn't stand it. They existed for one reason: to be adored, to be coddled, to be seen as cute. It made his skin crawl. And one bunny hybrid in particular made Elias' blood boil. Barret, the small, white-furred hybrid with long ears and bright, curious eyes. Elias had been around him enough to know that Barret was everything Elias despised. He was innocent, playful, and yet so unbearably soft. Barret's tail twitched with joy whenever he hopped around, and every time Elias saw that little waggling tail, he wanted to scream. Barret would sniff everything with an unrelenting curiosity, making Elias feel like the world was about to collapse around him. And that smile, that sweet, innocent smile, it made Elias want to tear something apart. Elias stood in his kennel during social time, the other hybrids playing around him. They all seemed content, oblivious to the storm of frustration that brewed inside Elias. He could hear Barret's soft footsteps as the bunny hybrid hopped closer, his soft fur brushing against the floor. Elias sneered, his lips curling back to reveal sharp fangs. "What, sissy boy?" he snarled, his voice low and dangerous. "Come to annoy me again?" Barret's big, round eyes looked up at him with innocence, and for a moment, Elias felt a pang of something sharp and unpleasant, like a thorn digging into his chest. But he quickly crushed it, staring down at Barret with disdain. "You really are pathetic," Elias spat, his words venomous, his body tensing in irritation. "Hopping around like you have no care in the world. You're nothing but a little bunny hybrid, good for nothing but being coddled and pampered. I hate you, Barret. I hate everything about you." Barret's ears drooped slightly, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he tilted his head, those big eyes never leaving Elias. "I don't need you to like me, Elias," Barret said softly, his voice almost too kind, too gentle. "I just want to be your friend." Elias's heart skipped a beat. No, he couldn't feel anything for this soft, stupid bunny. He clenched his fists, his anger bubbling up once again. He hated how Barret's words didn't wound him like they should. They dug deeper, and Elias wanted to run from it, but he couldn't. It was as if Barret had gotten under his skin in a way no one else had ever managed. "I don't need a friend," Elias growled, trying to regain control of the situation. "Especially not a weak little bunny who doesn't know his place." Barret's tail gave a small, tentative wag, and his smile remained. "Maybe you do," Barret said quietly. "Maybe I'm exactly what you need." Elias stared at him, heart pounding, eyes narrowing as if he could fight off the confusion gnawing at his mind. "Shut up," he snarled, turning his back to Barret, feeling an unfamiliar flutter in his chest. He couldn't let this happen. He couldn't let himself feel anything for the soft, innocent bunny hybrid who seemed to refuse to leave his side. But Barret didn't leave. Instead, he softly padded to Elias's side and sat down, his small body pressing gently against Elias's tough exterior. Elias could feel the warmth of him, could smell the sweet scent of his fur. And despite himself, he didn't pull away. "You hate me, don't you?" Barret whispered, his voice filled with a tenderness Elias had never known. Elias swallowed, his breath catching in his throat. I don't know what I feel," he muttered, his voice rough. "But it sure as hell isn't love." Barret nuzzled against his side, his soft fur brushing against Elias's arm. "It doesn't have to be love yet," he said softly. "But maybe, just maybe, we can start with understanding." Elias' heart pounded painfully in his chest as he stood frozen, caught between the man he had been and the person he might become. The anger was still there, but now there was something else. Something soft, something tender. Elias had spent his whole life in the arenas, fighting, bleeding, and winning. He knew how to take a punch, how to break bones, how to silence the weak. But nothing in all his years of brutal survival had prepared him for the infuriating persistence of Barret. The bunny hybrid wouldn't leave him alone. Every day, without fail, Barret would hop over to Elias's kennel during social time. The other hybrids avoided Elias, keeping their distance like prey instinctively avoiding a predator. But Barret? Number Barret would sit just outside the bars, those big, stupid eyes staring up at Elias like he wasn't some monster bred for war. Like he wasn't dangerous. Like he was worth knowing. Elias hated it. But what he hated more was that, for some reason, he didn't tell Barret to leave. Tonight was no different. The fluorescent lights of the pound buzzed overhead as hybrids chatted and played in the open area. Elias sat with his back against the cold concrete wall, arms crossed, watching the scene with a scowl. His ears twitched as soft footsteps approached. He didn't even have to look. He already knew. "What do you want, sissy boy?" he muttered, his voice a low growl. Barret plopped himself right in front of Elias, his fluffy tail giving a small, excited twitch. "Nothing," he said innocently. "Just wanted to sit here." Elias opened one eye, staring at him with disbelief. "You're seriously telling me you hopped all the way here just to sit?" Barret nodded, smiling. "Yep." Elias exhaled sharply through his nose. "You're so damn annoying." Barret grinned. "You say that a lot." "Because it's true." Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't the awkward kind. It was something else. Something Elias didn't want to name. He should tell Barret to leave. Should snarl at him, scare him off like he did with everyone else. But for some reason, he didn't. Instead, he found himself watching Barret's twitching ears, the way his nose wiggled slightly as he sniffed the air. Curious. Always so damn curious. Elias rolled his eyes. "You act like you've never seen a wolf hybrid before." Barret tilted his head. "I haven't. At least, not up close. Consider yourself lucky. Most don't survive after getting close." Barret hummed, unbothered. "Well, I don't think you're as scary as you pretend to be." Elias felt something stir inside him. Something unfamiliar. Something uncomfortable. His fists clenched. "I don't pretend to be anything." Barret simply smiled, as if he knew some secret Elias didn't. That was it. That little sound, that tiny hum of amusement, that knowing look in his eyes. It made something inside Elias snap. He lunged, his hand shot out, grabbing Barret's wrist in a tight grip. The bunny hybrid gasped softly but didn't flinch, didn't pull away. His eyes widened, and for the first time, Elias saw something other than innocence in them. He saw surprise. Maybe even curiosity. Elias leaned in, his sharp fangs just inches away from Barret's throat. "I could break you," he whispered, his voice dangerously low. Right here. Right now. Barret's breath hitched, but to Elias's frustration, there was no fear in his gaze. Only something warm, something soft, something Elias had never seen directed at him before. You won't, Barret murmured. Elias growled. And what makes you so sure? Barret's fingers curled slightly against Elias's hand, his touch feather-light. Because if you really wanted to hurt me, you would have done it already. Elias's grip tightened for a second. Just a second. Then, with a frustrated snarl, he let go and shoved Barret back, as if touching him had burned. You're an idiot, he muttered, turning away. Barret, to his everlasting irritation, just smiled. Maybe, but I don't think you hate me as much as you say you do. Elias said nothing. He couldn't, because he wasn't sure if Barret was wrong. Elias told himself that Barret didn't matter, that the damn bunny hybrid was just a persistent annoyance, like an itch he couldn't scratch. But every day, Barret came back, and every day, Elias let him. Tonight was no different. The dim fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Elias sat against the kennel wall, arms crossed, watching the other hybrids interact from a distance. It was social time again, and just like clockwork, soft footsteps padded closer. Elias exhaled sharply. You don't get tired of this, do you? Barret, as expected, ignored the bite in his tone and plopped down right in front of him, tail twitching slightly. Nope. Elias cracked open an eye, staring at him. What the hell do you even want? Barret tilted his head, his ears flopping slightly. You. Elias's chest tightened. Barret blinked, then laughed when he saw Elias's scowl deepen. Not like that. I just mean, I want to understand you. Elias growled. There's nothing to understand. I fight. I win. I survive. That's it. Barret hummed, that same knowing little sound that made Elias' jaw clench. I think there's more to you than that. Then you're an idiot. Maybe, Barret said easily, stretching his legs out in front of him. But you still haven't told me to leave. Elias had no response to that. For a while, silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It never was with Barret. And that was the worst part. It should be uncomfortable. It should be unbearable to have this small, fragile thing sitting so close, acting like they were equals. Like Elias wasn't a beast built for war. Like he wasn't something to be feared. Barret shifted, his long ears twitching. Can I ask you something? Elias groaned. You're going to anyway? Barret grinned. True. Why do you hate bunny hybrids so much? Elias went still, his fingers curled into fists, his claws threatening to extend. They're weak. Barret nodded, waiting for more. Elias exhaled sharply, hating that Barret wasn't satisfied with that answer. They need to be cared for. They can't survive on their own. They're soft. He sneered. I don't get why they even exist. Barret hummed thoughtfully. You say that like softness is a bad thing. It is. Barret looked at him, really looked at him, with those big, warm eyes. Or maybe you just don't know what it's like to have someone be soft with you. Elias felt something crack inside his chest. A tiny, fragile thing, splintering under the weight of Barret's words. His ears flicked back, his entire body tense. You don't know anything about me. Barret smiled, gentle, knowing, unbearably kind. Then tell me. Elias' throat tightened. He didn't understand this. He didn't understand him. Barret wasn't scared of him. He wasn't trying to fix him. He wasn't even trying to push Elias into something he didn't want. He was just there, persistent, unshaken. And Elias was starting to hate how much he didn't hate it. Barret shifted, suddenly closer, his small hand reaching out. Elias didn't move, didn't breathe, as Barret's fingers gently brushed over his knuckles. Elias could break him. He could crush those fragile bones with one squeeze. But he didn't. Barret smiled, his ears twitching. See? You don't hate me. Elias swallowed, his voice rough. I don't. But he didn't finish the sentence. Elias was losing his mind. That was the only explanation. Because every night, during social time, Barret sat with him. Every night, Elias let him. And now, it wasn't just that Elias tolerated him. Now he was waiting for him. He hated it. Hated how his ears twitched at the sound of soft footsteps approaching. Hated how he recognized the scent before he even looked up. Fresh hay? Something sweet? Something safe. Hated how, when Barret plopped down in front of him, Elias's fists weren't clenched in anger anymore. Hey, big guy, Barret said, smiling like he wasn't sitting in front of someone who used to break hybrids like him for sport. Elias exhaled through his nose. You again. Barret grinned. Me again. Elias should have rolled his eyes, should have told him to piss off, but instead, his gaze flickered downward, to Barret's hands. Bandages, fresh ones, wrapped neatly around his palms, something sharp twisted in Elias's chest. What happened? Barret blinked, then followed Elias's line of sight to his hands. Oh, this? He wiggled his fingers. Just a scratch. Elias's ears flicked back. That's not just a scratch. Barret shrugged. Fine, I tripped. Elias narrowed his eyes. On what? A goddamn landmine? Barret laughed, but Elias didn't find it funny. His fingers twitched. He didn't like this. Didn't like seeing something hurt Barret. Didn't like that there had been blood on those soft, stupid hands. Didn't like how it made him feel. Barret tilted his head. Are you worried about me? No, Elias snapped. Too fast, too sharp. Barret just looked at him, and Elias wanted to shove him, wanted to make him stop staring at him like that. Like he saw something in Elias that Elias didn't even see in himself. You are, Barret said softly, ears twitching. That's kinda cute. Elias growled, baring his fangs. I am not cute. Barret giggled. Actually giggled. Like Elias hadn't just snarled at him. You totally are. Elias wanted to grab him, shake him, make him stop saying stupid things. Instead, he found himself staring at those damn bandages again. Who patched you up? He asked gruffly. Barret blinked. Oh, one of the staff. Why? Elias flexed his fingers, an unfamiliar heat simmering under his skin. He hated that someone else had done it. That someone else had touched Barret's hands, had taken care of him. That should bother him. Shouldn't it? No, it shouldn't. But it did. Barret scooted closer. Elias didn't move. Do you want to hold them? Barret teased, wiggling his fingers in front of Elias's face. Elias grabbed his wrist before he could think. Barret's breath hitched. Elias didn't squeeze, didn't hurt. He just held. Barret was warm, small, too soft. Elias didn't want to break something delicate. He wanted to protect it. Barret looked up at him, eyes wide, pink dusting his cheeks. Elias. Elias scowled. Shut up. But he didn't let go. Elias was losing control. It started small. He let Barret sit too close. Let their knees brush. Let the bunny hybrid talk and talk and talk, even when Elias pretended not to listen. And now he was holding Barret's wrist like some possessive bastard. Like it mattered to him. Barret's fingers twitched under his grip, but he didn't pull away. He just looked up, those wide, stupidly soft eyes watching Elias like he wasn't a monster. Like he wasn't dangerous. Elias hated it. But he didn't let go. You're really holding my hand right now, Barret whispered, voice teasing but breathless. Elias growled. Shut up. Barret's lips curled up, the barest hint of a smirk. Does this mean you like me? Elias bared his fangs, but there was no real heat behind it. It means I'm debating whether to strangle you or not. Barret hummed, unimpressed. I don't think you'd hurt me. Elias tightened his grip, not enough to bruise, but enough to make a point. You think you know me? Barret's ears twitched. I think I know enough. Elias scowled. He should let go. He should. But instead, his thumb brushed over the bandages on Barret's palm. Just once. Just lightly. Barret sucked in a breath. Elias yanked his hand back like he'd been burned. A thick silence settled between them. Barret's ears twitched, his tail giving a slow, unsure flick. Elias clenched his fists, digging his claws into his palms. He felt off. Wrong. Like he was standing on the edge of something and had no idea what waited on the other side. You don't hate me, Barret said suddenly, voice quieter than usual. Elias's ears flattened. I do. Barret shook his head, smiling faintly. No, you don't. Elias opened his mouth, ready to snap, to argue, to shove Barret away and make him stop looking at him like that. But he didn't.